Here is your latest African news. Africa-wide, UN agency calls for more protection for African refugees and migrants. The UN Refugee Agency (UNHCR) has called for more to be done to protect African refugees and migrants from traffickers on their way from the Sahel and the Horn of Africa toward North Africa and Europe. UNHCR spokeswoman Shabia Manto says traffickers take advantage of African refugees fleeing persecution and violence and economic migrants and climate shocks, subjecting them to appalling abuse. The report provides tailored information for refugees and migrants on services available on different routes. The UNHCR is calling for the creation of shelters and safe places, better access to legal services and specialized services for children and female survivors of trafficking and gender-based violence. The report issued by the UNHCR and Mixed Migration Center at the Danish Refugee Council is based on information from 12 countries from Burkina Faso and Cameroon to Somalia and Sudan. UNHCR officials stressed the importance of identifying critical locations to serve as so-called last spots, places where refugees and migrants can get information about the dangers that lie ahead before they embark on journeys across the Sahara. Nigeria. Outcry over killing of Nigerian migrant in Italian town center. The assault on the Nigerian street trader by the Italian man in Civitanova Marche town center was captured on video on July 29th. The recording, reportedly made by onlookers without any attempt to intervene, shows the victim being held to the ground by the white man. A 32-year-old Italian man has been arrested on suspicion of murder and robbery. The video of the attack, which has widely been circulated on Italian news websites and social media, has shocked the world, with many highlighting the indifferences of witnesses. On the weekend, hundreds of people from the local Nigerian community took to the streets of Civitanova Marche in Marche region to demand justice. The circumstances of the incidents are unclear. The victim has been named as Alika Ogochukwu, a married father of two. Horn of Africa. Egypt protests Ethiopia's plan to fill the reservoir for a third year. Egypt has said it had protested to the UN Security Council against Ethiopian plans to fill the reservoir for controversial Nile Dam for a third year, without agreement from downstream countries. The multi-billion-dollar Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam on the Blue Nile is said to be the largest hydroelectric scheme in Africa, but has been at the center of a dispute with Egypt and Sudan ever since work began in 2011. Egypt received a message from the Ethiopian side on July 26, stating that Ethiopia would continue filling the reservoir of the Renaissance Dam during the current flood season, a foreign ministry statement said. In response, Egypt wrote to the UN Security Council to register its obligation and complete rejection of Ethiopia's continuation of filling the Renaissance Dam unilaterally without a deal. Burkina Faso. Anti-France movement rises in Burkina Faso. Demonstrators gathered outside former President Thomas Sankara's memorial in Ouagadougou on July 30th to reject the presence of the French military in the country. The figure of the Burkinabe Revolution was assassinated during a coup led by Blaise Compaoré, who was close to France until his fall in 2014. A newly formed coalition, M30 Naaba Wabgo, called on the termination of cooperation agreements with France. Protesters held banners reading, "Down with the UE, France's accomplice. France is imperialist, tyrant, parasitic, out," and "No to cooperation agreements with France." The movement announced a rally on 12th August to demand an end to French politics in all its form and the departure of the French ambassador. These actions are taking place only days after Emmanuel Macron ended his three-nation tour in Cameroon, Benin, and Guinea-Bissau, a bid to renew relationships with countries in the region. Nigeria. Looted artifacts in Oxford Museum could be returned to Nigeria. Oxford University could return almost 100 artifacts that were looted by British colonial forces in 1897 after Nigeria requested the repatriation of the cultural items this year. The 97 objects, including bronzes, were taken from Benin City by British troops and are currently held in the collections of the Pitt Rivers Museum and the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. The Pitt Rivers Museum has received a claim for the return of the items from Nigeria's National Commission for Museums and Monuments, NCMM, PMM, Oxford University Council has decided to support the claim, which will be considered by the Charity Commission before the return of the artifacts can be authorized. The university said it was expected that this claim would be considered by next month. Kenya. History as Kenyans take full control of Safaricom. For the first time, Safaricom has locals at the helm of its leadership after John Ngumi was appointed the company's board chairman, replacing Michael Joseph, who served in the role for 2 years. The appointment of Mr. Ngumi, a seasoned director at private and public enterprises, was announced to Safaricom shareholders during the company's annual general meeting. The appointment takes effect on August 1, 2022. Mr. Ngumi will be joining Mr. Ndegwa, another Kenyan, who was appointed the Safaricom Chief Executive Officer in April 2020, marking the first time that the position and chairman will be held by Kenyans concurrently. The slots have always been occupied by a mix of a foreigner and a local due to the influence of foreign-based major shareholders. Diaspora. Will Smith apologizes to Chris Rock and his mother for Oscar's slap in emotional video. In a video posted online on July 29th, Oscar-winning actor Will Smith, making his most extensive public comments since he slapped Chris Rock at the Academy Awards in March, apologized directly to the comedian and said he was deeply remorseful over his behavior. In a nearly 6-minute video uploaded to Instagram and YouTube, Smith said he did not originally apologize to Rock in his Oscars acceptance speech because he was fogged out, but he said he has reached out to Chris and the message that came back is that he's not ready to talk, and when he is, he will reach out. He then extended his apologies to Rock's mother Rose and his younger brother Tony. Smith previously apologized to Rock in a written statement days after the 94th Academy Awards ceremony, saying in part that he was out of line and embarrassed. Smith slapped Rock across the face after the comedian made a joke about the actor's wife Jada Pinkett Smith. Rock, presenting the Oscar for Best Documentary Feature, had said he was excited to watch Pinkett Smith in G.I. Jane 2.
Africa-wide. Italian judge upholds Italians jailing in immigrant's death. A judge in Italy on August 1st ordered an Italian man to remain in jail as an investigation continues into the death of a Nigerian street vendor whose brutal beating at the hands of the suspect shocked many in the world and prompted strong condemnation from the Nigerian government. Police took Filippo Claudio Giuseppe Felazzo, 32, into custody on July 29th, minutes after the vendor was beaten and left for dead on a busy shopping street in the beach town of Civitanova, much as bystanders watched, including at least 2 who filmed the attack. An autopsy this week will determine the exact cause of death for Alika Ogochukwu, 39. Widely circulated videos showed the suspect on top of Ogochukwu, pummeling him with his bare hands after first striking him with the victim's own crutch. Meanwhile, the Nigerian government demanded Italy swiftly bring the perpetrator of the heinous act to justice. A Nigerian foreign minister statement released July 31st said the government strongly condemns the gruesome murder of a Nigerian and calls on all Nigerians to exercise restraint as the law takes its course. The country's embassy in Rome has been instructed to work speedily together with the relevant Italian authorities to ensure that justice is served in order to forestall a repeat of the unfortunate incident. Mali. Mali accuses Macron of neo-colonial attitude. Mali's army-led government has urged French President Emmanuel Macron to abandon his neo-colonial and patronizing attitude as relations between Paris and Bamako deteriorate. France is configuring its position in the Sahel after falling out with the military government in Mali, the center of a bloody 10-year campaign against extremists in the region. Mali underwent coups in August 2020 and May 2021, creating a political crisis that has coincided with the current security crisis. France first intervened in Mali in 2013 to combat an insurgency that had emerged 12 months earlier. However, it revealed this year that it would withdraw its forces. Bamako also condemned what it called hateful and defamatory remarks, blaming the Malian army for killing civilians during recent operations. It criticized Mr. Macron for making erroneous accusations. Relations between Paris and Bamako have deteriorated significantly over the past year. France was pushed out by the military government after 9 years' presence in Mali. DR Congo. DR Congo suspends UN troops linked to deadly shootout. UN peacekeepers arrested in the Democratic Republic of Congo over the killing of 2 civilians at a border crossing on July 31st will no longer serve in the country, according to government spokesman Patrick Muyaya. 15 others were injured when the peacekeepers forced their way across the border from Uganda through Kasindi town. The government and the UN peacekeeping mission, MONUSCO, are investigating the incident, Mr. Muyaya said. Meanwhile, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said he is outraged after at least 2 people were killed when peacekeepers in the Democratic Republic of Congo opened fire at a border crossing. In a statement, Mr. Guterres called for accountability after the incident, which happened as the soldiers forced their way across the border from Uganda into eastern DR Congo. Video footage appears to show an argument taking place before troops in the UN convoy before shooting and sending people running for cover. Over the last week, there have been deadly protests against the UN mission, which many feel has failed to protect people from armed attacks. South Africa. South Africa lodges WTO complaint against EU citrus fruit clampdown. The WTO spokesperson has announced that South Africa has launched a dispute complaint against the European Union concerning measures imposed by the bloc on South African citrus fruit imports. In a first-ever WTO dispute settlement case initiated by South Africa, the country's request for dispute consultations with the EU was circulated to WTO members on July 31st. South Africa is challenging recently enacted changes to EU phytosanitary requirements for imports of oranges and other citrus products related to the pest Thaumatotibia lusotreta, or false codling moth, the WTO statement said. CEO of the Citrus Growers Association (CGA) of South Africa said a consultation with the WTO has been requested by the South African government to address the measures. The Department of Trade, Industry and Competition (DTIC) confirmed that the government has submitted a request for consultation with the EU in terms of the WTO understanding on rules and procedures governing the settlement of disputes. The new EU measures have already impacted an estimated 3.2 million cartons of citrus valued at 605 million rand. Uganda. Death toll from Uganda floods rises to 21, with many more feared dead. Death toll in the weekend flooding triggered by heavy rains in eastern Uganda has risen to 21, the Ugandan Red Cross Society (URCS) said on July 31st. The URCS said heavy rains have displaced thousands of people and more than 1,000 households have been affected in neighboring districts, while 4 others have been put on high alert. The country's meteorological department warned about the northern, eastern, and midwestern parts receiving heavy rainfall in August, 2 days before the incident occurred. Police and the military were called in to help in the search and rescue operations in Mbale, where stranded residents could only watch helplessly as their belongings were washed away by the floodwaters. Côte d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire discovers new oil gas. Côte d'Ivoire has reported a fresh discovery of offshore oil and natural gas by Italian firm Eni, expanding the potential of reserves found last year by 25%. In September 2021, the country had announced a find of deposits estimated at between 1.5 and 2 billion barrels of oil and around 1.8 to 2.4 trillion cubic feet, that is 51 to 56 million cubic meters of gas. The latest discovery off the eastern coast increases by about 25% of the previously announced deposits, the Ministry for Mines, Oil and Energy said in a statement, with extraction due to start in early 2023. President Alassane Ouattara said he wants Côte d'Ivoire to become a major oil producer. The West African nation's current output is modest at around 30,000 barrels per day. Diaspora. Conjoined Brazilian twins separated with the help of virtual reality. Brazilian twins who were joined at the head have been successfully separated with the help of virtual reality. 3-year-old Bernardo and Arthur Lima underwent surgeries in Rio de Janeiro. The teams spent months trialing techniques using virtual reality projections of the twins based on CT and MRI scans. It was described by Surgeon Noor ul Uwasa Jelani as space-age stuff. It was one of the most complex separation processes ever completed. He said that for the first time, surgeons in separate countries wore headsets and operated in the same virtual reality room together. The twins had 7 surgeries involving more than 27 hours of operating time in the final operation alone and almost 100 medical staff.
Democratic Republic of Congo. Democratic Republic of Congo to discuss withdrawal of UN peacekeepers. The Democratic Republic of Congo is expected to hold talks with the UN mission in the country, MONUSCO, on the withdrawal of peacekeepers. The announcement came after President Felix Tshisekedi chaired a meeting with the presidents of the 2 chambers of parliament, the Prime Minister, and officials from the eastern North Kivu province. Report says the deadly protest demanding MONUSCO expulsion erupted in North Kivu's capital, Goma, on July 25th and have since spread. Activists have accused the UN mission of failing to stop a decades-long rebellion in the east. The government spokesperson, Mr. Patrick Muyaya, said a total of 36 people, including 4 UN peacekeepers, have been killed following the protests. Meanwhile, on August 1st, security forces dispersed fresh protests in BENIN, North Kivu, and it resulted in the disruption of activities in the region. A UN peacekeeping force has been in the Democratic Republic of Congo for more than 2 decades. MONUSCO took over from the previous UN mission in 2010. East Africa. Mastermind of terror attacks on US embassies in Kenya and Tanzania killed. The US has killed the leader of Al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri, in a drone strike in Afghanistan, President Joe Biden has confirmed. He was killed in a counter-terrorism operation carried out by the CIA in the Afghan capital of Kabul. On July 31st, Zawahiri took over Al-Qaeda after the death of Osama bin Laden in 2011. Zawahiri had masterminded the August 1998 attacks on the US embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, in which 223 people died. Ayman al-Zawahiri was an Egyptian doctor who was imprisoned in the 1980s for involvement in radical Islam. He left Egypt after his release and eventually settled in Afghanistan, where he joined forces with Osama bin Laden. Zawahiri was considered to be the ideological brains of Al-Qaeda. He was indicted in the US for his role in the August 1998 bombing of the US embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, which killed 224 people and wounded thousands others. Ghana. Ghanaian president says it's time for Africa to get slavery reparations. Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo has called for slavery reparations to Africa and the African diaspora. Speaking at the Reparations and Racial Healing Summit on August 1st, President Akufo-Addo said these reparations were long overdue and needed to be intensified. He questioned double standards in the debate when it came to other races and ethnic groups that were wronged historically. He also complained that all the owners of enslaved Africans received reparations to the tune of £20 million, but enslaved Africans themselves did not receive a penny. Haiti also had to pay reparations amounting to $21 billion to French slaveholders in 1825 following the Haitian Revolution. Whilst reiterating that no amount of money can restore the damage caused by the transatlantic slave trade and its consequences, which have spanned many centuries, the president stated that nevertheless it is now time to revive and intensify the discussions about reparations for Africa. He asked participants at the summit not to overly concern themselves with modalities for the payment of reparations, but rather work to establish unequivocally first the justice in the call for reparations. Benin. Benin unveils a giant Amazon statue of a warrior woman. Benin's President Patrice Talon has unveiled 3 monuments in the capital Cotonou to remind citizens to celebrate the historical heroes. The monuments include the Garden of Matthew, the statue of the King Bayogera, and the Amazon. Matthew's gardens are in honor of the former President Matthew Kerako. The gardens are part of the project to embellish the city of Cotonou, a showcase city of the country. The giant Amazon statue has fueled controversy in the country, called Esplanade de Amazon. This square houses a majestic statue of a warrior woman considered for some as Queen Tassi Hangbe, and for others the portrait of a Beninese Amazon. Benin's president said the country needed to celebrate what is gratifying to them, and the monuments are there to instill pride and unity in the country. Ghana and Ivory Coast. Ghana and Ivory Coast want more premium for their cocoa beans. Major cocoa buyers have agreed to pay a premium and back a price floor on cocoa sold by Ivory Coast and Ghana as part of an agreement reached to combat poverty among farmers. Cocoa industry players will back a fixed living income differential of $400 a ton on all cocoa contracts sold by Ivory Coast or Ghana, two top global cocoa producers. Buyers will also pay a country premium that will enable cocoa regulators in both countries to reach a target floor price of $2,600 per ton, which should allow farmers to earn a minimum of 70% of the target floor price. Both countries have struggled to achieve the price target, prompting the Côte d'Ivoire-Ghana Cocoa Initiative to work with the industry on a price mechanism. Somalia. Somalia Prime Minister names ex-Al-Shabaab leader Mukhtar Robow to cabinet. Somalia's Prime Minister Hamza Barre on August 2nd broke with tradition and named a former Al-Shabaab leader in his cabinet in what could signal a turn in counter-terrorism policy. Mr. Barre named Mukhtar Robow, a former deputy leader of the militant group Al-Shabaab, 2 years after he was placed under house arrest. Mr. Robow will now be the Minister of Endowment, Religious Affairs and Counter-Terrorism Ideology. He will mostly be in charge of dissuading the youth from joining Al-Shabaab based on religious convictions. His Council of Ministers consists of 26 men and women, including politicians and former senior government officials. Mr. Robow had defected to the government in 2017 after falling out with other Al-Shabaab faction leaders. Over a decade ago, he had told the media in Mogadishu that he was lucky to have been one of the few Somalis trained in Al-Qaeda's camp in Afghanistan, and that on one occasion he shook hands with Osama bin Laden, the then leader of that group. Diaspora. Slave owner Sir Thomas Picton portrait returns in bid to reframe past. A portrait of slave owner Sir Thomas Picton has been put up on display, albeit boxed up and alongside new artworks and information that reframes his place in history. The portrait was removed from National Museum Cardiff in November following scrutiny of memorials to slave owners. The museum commissioned 2 artworks from Trinidadian artists to reframe his legacy and give a voice to his victims. Young people also worked with curators to provide additional context. Previously, information alongside the portrait of Picton, who was from Haverford West, Pembrokeshire, hailed him as a hero of the Battle of Waterloo. It had not included his brutal treatment of the people of Trinidad, including the torture of 14-year-old Luisa Calderon. One of the new artworks, an installation called The Wound is a Portal, is by multidisciplinary artist Gacy, who is from Trinidad and Tobago and has Nigerian heritage. The Picton portrait is one of 200 memorials in Wales to people with links to slavery identified by a 2020 audit. The new exhibition came after the museum called in the Sub-Saharan Advisory Panel to decide the future of the portrait, which had hung in the museum's Face of Wales gallery. The group said the painting should remain on display, but with added details about Picton's actions as a slave owner.
Africa-wide. Africa Fast Roundtable on Climate Initiatives Ahead COP27 begins in Addis Ababa. Charting a new and sustainable economic model is at the top of discussions as the first African Regional Roundtable on Climate Initiatives kicked off in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia on August 2nd. The UN Under-Secretary General and Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Africa ECA Vera Songwe, alongside African finance and trade ministers, are among the stakeholders taking part in the forum. Ministers discussed the African Trade Exchange Platform, highlighting the need for fertilizers across Africa, especially since the continent has been heavily impacted by COVID, the Ukraine conflict, and rising food prices. Organizers of the 3-day forum titled Towards COP27 African Regional Forum on Climate Initiatives to Finance Climate Action and the SDGs say their aim is to catalyze climate finance and invest flows towards building climate resilience in Africa. The forum also comes ahead of Egypt's presidency of COP27 that takes place in Sharm el-Sheikh next November. Rwanda. Rwanda increases salaries of primary school teachers by 88%. Primary school teachers in Rwanda will get an 88% pay rise starting in August. This is part of the country's incentives aimed at improving teachers' livelihoods. Under these new revisions, secondary school teachers will also see their pay increased by 40%, the country's education ministry announced on its official Twitter page on Monday, August 1st. The salaries for head teachers, deputy head teachers, and support staff working in public and government-aided schools have also been revised upwards. These decisions come into force from the payment of the teacher salaries in August 2022. Whereas Rwanda has increased teachers' salaries by 10% since March in 2019, statistics have shown that over 1,000 Rwandan teachers leave their profession monthly in search of better welfare. The new pay rise is part of a package that will incorporate incentives to improve the welfare of teachers and promote the quality of education in public and government-aided schools for general education and TVET. Malawi government demands $309.6 billion from US company for illegal mining. Under instructions from the Minister of Finance, Malawi's Attorney General Thabo Chakaka Nyirenda has written to Columbia Gem House of Vancouver, USA, demanding $309.6 billion as claim for unpaid tax revenue in respect of ruby and sapphire minerals extracted from Chimwazulu mine in Cheu district by the U.S. company subsidiary Nyala Mines Limited. The Malawi government also claims interest at the commercial lending rate from the date the said taxes and royalties fell due to the date of payment within 30 days from the date the notice of claim was issued on July 26, 2022. There will also be a claim of 15% collection costs on the same $309.6 billion and failure to pay or indicate how the U.S. company intends to settle the said sum. The state of Malawi reserves the right to institute criminal proceedings on money laundering and tax evasion charges against Columbia Gem House and Nyala Mines Limited and all persons involved in the evasion of the taxes. The government of Malawi indicates that ruby and sapphire at Chimwazulu mine are mined and sold to the world market by Nyala Mines Limited through Columbia Gem House in the USA, which then sends it to China for cutting and polishing. The polished minerals are then sent back to the USA and marketed through Trigems, which is a retail outlet for Columbia Gem House owned by Eric Browart. Diaspora. Atlanta's image challenged by the 1906 race massacre legacy of white-on-black violence. Everyone who moves through downtown Atlanta today passes places where innocent black men and women were pulled from trolleys, shot in their workplaces, chased through the streets and beaten to death by a mob of 10,000 white men and boys. But few know about the 1906 Atlanta Race Massacre, which shaped the city's geography, economy, society, and power structure in lasting ways. Much like the Red Summer of 1919 in the south and northeast of the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921 in Oklahoma would years later, the white-on-black violence in Atlanta shattered dreams of racial harmony and forced thousands from their homes. A grassroots coalition is working to restore Atlanta's killings and their legacy to public memory. Historic markers and tours are planned for this September's anniversary. These activists say the massacre doesn't fit comfortably in Atlanta's cradle of the civil rights movement narrative, but they insist on truth-telling as some politicians push to ignore the nation's history of racial violence. Mislabeled a riot, the killings of at least 25 black people and the destruction of black-owned businesses had a specific purpose, thwarting their economic success and voting power before African Americans could claim equal status. The violence began where Georgia State University's campus is now. Enraged by unsupported headlines about attacks on the white women and the evils of race mixing, the mob set fire to saloons and pounced on black men and women headed home from work. Africa-wide. Napoli president rules out signing Africans committed to Nations Cup. Napoli owner and president Aurelio De Laurentiis said the Italian club will avoid signing any more African players unless they agree to not play in the Africa Cup of Nations. Senegal defender Kalidou Koulibaly, now at Premier League side Chelsea, and Cameroon midfielder Andre-Frank Zambo Anguissa missed 6 Napoli games while on international duty at this year's tournament, which took place in January and February. Koulibaly and Zambo Anguissa missed Napoli 1-1 draw with Juventus in early January and the Coppa Italia defeat by Fiorentina. Meanwhile, Senegal won the Nations Cup for the first time to spark wild celebrations back home, while host nation Cameroon finished third. Koulibaly spent 8 years at Napoli and responded to De Laurentiis' comments by saying, "It is important to respect everybody." The current rules of the world's governing body FIFA stipulate that players must be released for the Nations Cup despite its mid-season timing in Europe. The next edition of the Nations Cup will be held in January and February 2024 in Ivory Coast, having been moved from its initial dates of June to July 2023 because of weather concerns. Diaspora. Airbnb removes Mississippi slave cabin from listing after viral TikTok video. Airbnb has removed listings where enslaved people in the U.S. once lived following a viral TikTok video slamming a Mississippi property described as a slave cabin. Airbnb added that the company is working with experts to develop new policies to address other properties associated with slavery. The property at the forefront of the controversy is the Panther Barn Cottage at the Belmont Plantation in Greenville, Mississippi. It is no longer listed on the site. The Panther Barn cabin is an 1830s slave cabin from the extant Panther Barn Plantation to the south of Belmont. It has also been used as a tenant sharecropper's cabin and a medical office for local farmers and their families to visit the plantation doctor.
Central Africa. UN experts say Rwanda has intervened militarily in eastern Congo. The Rwandan army has intervened in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo in recent months, both directly and in support of armed groups, according to a report by United Nations experts. Rwanda has previously denied accusations by Congo's government that it supports the M23 and that it has sent troops into the country. The M23 has denied it receives Rwandan support. The UN group obtained solid evidence of the presence of the military operation conducted by RDF members in Rutshuru territory between November 2021 and July 2022. The report said RDF members conducted joint attacks with M23 fighters against Congo's army and Congolese armed groups and provided the rebels with weapons, ammunition, and uniforms, it said. The M23 insurgency stems from the long fallout from the 1994 genocide in Rwanda. The group was formed in 2012, claiming to defend the interest of Congolese Tutsis, the ethnic group shared by Rwanda's President Paul Kagame against Hutu militias. Nigeria. Nigeria finds stations for airing BBC banditry reports. Nigeria's broadcast regulator has fined 4 broadcasters, including MultiChoice Nigeria Limited, $12,000 each for airing a BBC documentary on activities of bandit gangs in northwestern Nigeria. The National Broadcasting Commission say the documentary glorified the activities of bandits and undermined national security and contravened the provisions of the Nigerian Broadcasting Code. The other broadcasters fined include Telkom Satellite Limited, NTA StarTimes Limited, and Trust Television Network. All outlets have until 30th of August to pay the fine. Uganda. Museveni to US envoy quoted saying, "Nobody gives us instructions." Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni met the US ambassador to the United Nations on August 4th. Linda Thomas-Greenfield is visiting Kampala just a few days after Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov was in town. In a statement before the meeting, President Museveni described Ms. Thomas-Greenfield as a very good friend. However, when asked whether she would bring instructions from Washington, the president was clear that, and I quote, "Nobody can give us the country instructions," end quote. He said that Uganda welcomes aid from Western powers, but insisted the country can survive, even thrive without it. The president said there has not been an attempt to influence the country's position on the Russian-Ukraine war. Uganda was one of 16 African countries to abstain on a UN resolution demanding Russia halt the conflict. Kenya. Kenya's Omanyala wins first-time Commonwealth men's 100-meter gold. Ferdinand Omanyala won the men's 100 meters at the Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games on the new athletic track at the Alexander Stadium. A packed-out crowd roared on the finalist in the penultimate event on the 3rd of August, with the Kenyan blasting out the blocks to win comfortably in a time of 10.02 seconds. Second was Gold Coast 2018 champion Akani Simbeni of South Africa, and rounding out the podium, a sensational bronze for Sri Lanka's Upon Abekun. It was redemption for Omanyala, who failed to reach the World Athletics Championships final last month. Visa issues meant that the African record holder arrived in Eugene at the 11th hour and was subsequently unable to perform at his best. South Sudan. Salva Kiir and Riek Machar extend the South Sudan transition by 2 years. South Sudan's leaders announced on August 4th that the country's post-war transitional government would remain in power 2 years beyond an agreed deadline, in a move foreign partners warned lacked legitimacy. Martin Elia Lomuro, the Minister of Cabinet Affairs, said the decision was taken to address the challenges that impede the implementation of the peace agreement, following a 2018 deal to end a 5-year civil war that left nearly 400,000 people dead. The world's newest nation was meant to conclude a transition period with elections in February 2023, but the government has so far failed to meet key provisions of the agreement, including drafting a constitution. Nigeria. Nigeria approves development of $2.5 billion Badagry seaport. Nigeria has approved $2.5 billion for the development of Badagry Seaport under a private-public partnership arrangement. Muazu Sambo, Minister of Transportation, gave the update at the Federal Executive Council meeting on August 3rd. Sambo explained that the port would be operated for 45 years by the developer, after which Nigerians would take over. Sambo said during the PPP lifespan, the project would provide about 200,000 jobs while generating a revenue of $56 billion. He added that the Badagry Deep Sea Port project is expected to make Nigeria a maritime hub in West Africa. In April, Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission said the Badagry Deep Sea Port would create a total ecosystem in terms of shipping, transportation, and job creation, among others. Diaspora. 4 police officers federally charged with civil rights violations in Breonna Taylor's death. 2 current and 2 former police officers in Louisville, Kentucky have been charged with violating Breonna Taylor's civil rights in the 2020 botched raid that led to the young black woman's death, federal officials said on August 4th. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland, in announcing the charges, said the Department of Justice alleges that the violations resulted in Miss Taylor's death. Detective Joshua James with the Louisville Metro Police Department obtained the warrant used in the March 13, 2020 search of the 26-year-old's medical worker's apartment. Kelly Goodlett, along with James, was a detective in the place-based investigation unit that investigated drug trafficking, and Sergeant Kyle Meany, who supervised the unit, were charged with falsifying an affidavit. James and Goodlett are accused of misleading investigators probing the deadly shooting. Meany allegedly lied to the FBI, Garland said. In a separate indictment, Brett Hankison was charged with using excessive force while executing the search warrant. Hankison was terminated from the department in June 2020, while James was terminated in January 2021. Louisville police said in a statement. The department is also looking to terminate Goodlett and Meany. Prominent civil rights attorney Ben Crump, in a statement on August 4th, said it had been a difficult 2 years since Taylor's death for her family and advocates fighting for her. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, follow, share and like our video. It's the best way of supporting us. And remember, Africa is watching.